We welcome everyone to the Insurance Perspectives podcast. This is a special edition of the podcast featuring Mick of Premier Strategy Box and coming to you live from the HawkSoft User Group National Conference in Carlsbad, California. So Mick, you hail from the great state of North Carolina, and you're an avid basketball fan. You support your alma mater, North Carolina Tar Heels.
Yes.
You got your start in the insurance world as a captive agent, and then you made the move to the independent side after 4 years, and you opened your own agency. In just 3 years, you transformed that agency through a robust sales process rooted in clear KPIs and accountability, escalating revenue to $3.2 million. That is very impressive.
Thank you.
So after selling your agency, you replicated the success as the head of a large MGA, and you boosted revenue very, very impressively. You boosted that revenue from 50 million to 70 million in 4 years. Yep. That is not insignificant growth. That is very impressive.
Thank you.
And you recently started your own podcast, which I hope I get an invite to, no pressure, called Mick Unplugged. And your mission is to inspire and empower by leveraging the experience you have in leading companies and training organizations. I have a set of questions I'm going to ask you, but before we dive into that, I really wanted to ask, how has your experience been so far here at the conference?
You guys always put on an amazing conference. I mean, from the exhibitor hall, the speakers, the sessions that are relevant to our industry, right? So kudos for you. I've been here, even though I'm speaking, I literally have sat through all the sessions other than when I'm speaking, obviously. Absolutely. But great sessions, great content, and I saw tons of notes being taken in every session.
Absolutely. I took it out of my pocket so I wouldn't fidget with while I was recording, but I have a notebook full of notes myself. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you're here with us. I really appreciate you sitting down. We met in Salt Lake City probably like a year ago, but it feels like a few months. And I actually really learned a lot from your talk. And it was one of those conversations where it reinforced a lot of things that I knew in my head, but you gave structure to it. And so I was so happy when we found out that you were going to be here, and I was like, yes, we got to talk to him, because sincerely, I really appreciated that presentation you gave, and I was like, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with you. So we have kind of some 3 topics that we're going to dive into, but you help agencies a lot and give them some guidance and some help. And so what are the signs that an agency needs outside help?
There are plenty of signs, right? Like, it could be anything depending on where that agency is and where they're trying to go. For some agencies, it's about scale. For some agencies, it's process. For some agencies, it's trying to improve their profitability margins or their EBITDA, right? So it really depends on where the agency is, where they're going, and what are those obstacles. So if you were to say, what's a sign? Usually there's a challenge or obstacle that you've been trying to fix yourself for 6 months, 18 months, 24 months. And you just don't have either the time, the resources, or the help to see that problem or challenge through.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So if you've been floundering for a while, it's time to reach out. It's time to, and I think some people hesitate to make that decision and say, I need help.
Of course. But
I think it's something meaningful they should be comfortable with. And does not illuminate any personal failing. We all need help.
Right, and getting over the hump doesn't mean that we failed, right? Like, if you're trying to scale, it is time is now, let's do it.
Yeah.
Right, if you're looking for help with processes, workflows, efficiencies, technology, it doesn't mean you're failing. It could be that it's a milestone, and now is the time to do that.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So then, what's the first step that an agency should take to address a problem?
It's literally what you said, acknowledging that there's a problem. A lot of us don't take the time to actually acknowledge or accept that there's a challenge or problem. We just deal with it and say, oh, it's the norm. We're in this hard market. Yeah. It's our industry. Well, no, there is something you can do. And I think the first step is to acknowledge that, yep, this is the problem, or this is the problem I want to conquer. Yeah. And to me, that's always the first step.
So a lot of your education for agencies and your work with small businesses focuses around sales and the pursuit of success. So I'd love to know for you, what is key to a successful sales process?
The first thing for me is saying that I'm going to master something. You know, Bruce Lee has a famous quote where he says, "I fear not the person who practices over 10,000 kicks. I fear the person who practices one kick 10,000 times."
Absolutely.
And so for me, the first sign or the first step in your sales process should be, okay, I'm not going to be a generalist. I'm not going to have 10,000 kicks. What's the one thing that I'm really going to master? What's my one niche market truly going to be?
Yeah.
And that's the key, because again, you can be the knower of a lot of things or the master of one. And I always tell salespeople this: you want to be sought after as opposed to always being seeking.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so mastering that one thing is the first.
I love that. I love you want to be sought after. That is, it's so true. I feel like it's great life advice. Just like you don't want to, my brain, and this is just my like millennial brain, is just like, you don't want to be thirsty. But like, you know, it's that kind of thing where it's like, you do, I feel like that puts a really inelegant spin on what you just said, but like sincerely, and then that might make it click for some people, some younger sales professionals, where it's like, you don't want to be the person that's constantly like blowing someone up. You want them reaching out to you.
Yeah, because you millennials don't like making phone calls.
No, we don't.
Right?
God, no.
But you would answer your call or answer your email as opposed to taking that step. And, you know, I tell my kids who are millennials this, and, you know, I do a lot of work with college athletes. Best known beats best every time.
Absolutely.
Right? And so in the sales world, you want to be best known.
Yeah.
You can't be best known over a lot of things. You want to be the best known in that one niche, in that one industry.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely.
Okay, find that one thing you need to master. And then what is an effective way to uncover a client's pain point?
Literally, this was a session we were doing today, the anatomy of sales. And it starts with understanding that pain exists. So I always tell people, and I'm sure you're like this too, right? No one's ever called me that just wants to talk about insurance or the insurance industry. Usually when you receive a call or someone accepts that meeting with you or that appointment, there's pain.
Yeah.
Your job as a salesperson is to figure that out. So there's always 3 questions that I start every sales interview with, and it's this: what do you love about your current agent or provider?
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure what you love, I can also do.
Yeah.
You know, Kenny, if you love that your insurance agent is your mother-in-law, sorry, I have no chance in Hades, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you love about your current agent? Question 2, and this is where pain starts: what do you wish they did better? Because remember, they've accepted a meeting with you.
Yeah.
No one calls insurance agents out of the blue,
Yeah.
right? So what do you wish your current agent did better? That starts the psychology of sales. That starts the psychology of pain,
Yeah.
right? And then the third question that I always ask is, what does a successful relationship with your agent or broker look like in your mind? Because now they're going to tell me how they want to be communicated with. They're going to tell me, you know, what do they really want out of me? So instead of me giving them answers that they may not need, I'm hearing what truly matters to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like all of those questions aim to reposition it outside of a strictly sales relationship. And it's like, no, we're going to build a bond. I'm not just going to collect your premium check and then walk away. We're starting something. We're going to start a conversation. We're going to start hopefully a lifelong relationship where, yeah, you'll call me if you have a claim, but also we see each other at a basketball game, we're going to say hi and have a conversation about our kids.
Right, and that's literally where it has to start. I would say one of the things that gets under my skin when I listen to calls or I role play with producers, they immediately go into the risk assessment questions, right? Tell me your sales, tell me your payroll, what's your address, what's the square footage of your home or your building. That's not sales, right? My daughter, and I use this as an example today, my daughter was looking for insurance. She wanted to surprise me and come off my policy.
Gotcha.
Right? So she called an agent because she understands what her dad does and why relationships matter. But the agent who answered the phone went straight into question, answer, question, answer. That's not a buying experience. And our job as salespeople is to deliver a buying experience because people want to buy, they don't want to be sold to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we have to negate question, answer, because people like Kenny and that generation, if you're going to ask me a bunch of questions, just send me a form to fill out.
Yeah.
Is that not how you would feel,
No,
Kenny?
totally.
Right?
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. And so we have to be cognizant of that in our sales process.
Yeah,
too.
I love that because I feel, and this is kind of borrowing a story from a good friend and also a partner of HawkSoft, Tori, who's the CEO and co-founder of Client Circle. He talks about kind of one of their origin points as being they had an agent that they really liked that was, I believe, the commercial agent for their dad's hardware store, and it really bugged them that people saw insurance agents as the needlehead Ned from Groundhog's Day, chasing after somebody and immediately breaking into the sales mode. And I think that insurance professionals, they start to do a disservice to themselves by embracing that approach and not taking the time to get to know who they're talking about, doing that more discovery approach, and making it a more personal buying experience than just like you said, like it's kind of like the modern approach to applying for a job. Here's my resume, and then I'm going to also type in all these different things. Right. Forms can do that. The agent, the insurance professional, they can build that relationship and go beyond that.
Yeah, because we talk about the buyer journey, and people want to buy, they don't want to be sold to. And here's a stat that all of your listeners can write down right now. 86% of people care more about the buying experience than they do the product or service that they just purchased. So the buying experience truly matters, and that's what we have to start embracing, because again, people like Kenny are now owning businesses. People like Kenny are buying homes, and like insurance really matters, and it's an important deal. And I don't mean to call you out, people
you're
like
totally
Kenny,
fine.
but you get what I'm saying. Like your generation, experience matters.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Experience matters, and that's where we've got to be able to take that approach in our sales process of understanding the buying experience. And as a salesperson, my job isn't to sell you a policy, it's to be your concierge through this journey.
Yeah.
And that's the approach that we make our producers take.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the right mentality to go in with, because you're going to form long-term bonds with that. Correct. Speaking of long-term bonds and why it's kind of important, how should agents be approaching people, whether it's their clients or maybe their family, for referrals?
I always tell people, make it a part of your processes. So if I provide Kenny great service, maybe there's an email or social media tag that I put out that asks for a referral, right? And we get our customers to try to hone in on one person, because here's what happens, right? I tell Kenny, did I do a great job with you today?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Kenny, can you think of a couple of people that you could give my information to, or you could give me information from? Kenny starts thinking of a whole bunch of people, and Kenny knows his mom doesn't want her cell phone number given out or email going out, right? We just say, hey, here's an email that you can send, or if you don't mind going to our website, or here's a form that we have. Like, make that a part of the process. And then also, it should be a part of your renewal strategy as well, too. So if I'm talking to you and we're renewing your policy, now I can ask for a referral, because the customer, obviously you did a great job because they're renewing with you. Yeah. That's usually the best time to ask for a referral.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes total sense. And it is one of those things where you almost have to equip them with all of the means to, when the moment strikes, to get in touch with you, not like as like a prescript just thing where you're having a conversation. Oh, it's cool. Can you text 5 of your friends right now? Right. It's like when they're having a terrible experience with their captive or their direct writer, and they're venting frustration at brunch. You can say afterwards, like, hey, I have a pretty great agent. Why don't I give you their card?
And that's why we do it at renewal, because they've had the experience with you. Usually it should have been a great experience when you purchase or when they purchased insurance. Now they've done it again or a second time. So now they have something that they really can refer to. Yeah. Right? So that's just a little technique, a little tip.
I like that a lot. So then building on that, and I mean, this kind of touches on it because of the referral stage, but what is an effective way to get your clients to start referring more business? Is there a way to incentivize it in addition to adding it into the renewal process?
For me, I don't know because there's so many different rules, right, in insurance around rebating and buying referrals.
Yeah.
But you could have some type of raffle,
Gotcha.
right? Maybe there's a giveaway or make it fun, gamify it, right? You know, a contest for who's given the most referrals, but make it visible for your customers if that's important. But I would tell folks, be cognizant, know your rules of what your state says around rebating, but just ask. Have the courage to ask. That's the big thing.
It's always like the common disclaimer that should just come like just floating across the screen under any conversation about insurance. It's like, yeah, just maybe check in with the Department of Insurance. Like, yeah, it'll be fine. Okay. One of the big things that you talk about and help agencies figure out, and what you spoke to a lot of when I first encountered you in Salt Lake City, agency culture. So that's kind of the last section I want to dive in with you. Why should an agency care about their culture? Isn't work just work? Why does it matter?
No, because your team matters. The people that work with you and for you matter. Your customers matter, and all of that starts with your culture. One of the things that I'm really big on, and I know you heard this in Salt Lake City, is abandoning mission and vision statements. Because most of the time your team doesn't know them. They might can see them and they know where to go find them, but they don't really know them or they don't embrace them. And 99.9% of your customers have never seen or heard of your mission and vision statements either. So we challenge folks to have because statements, right? So an example is for us at Premier Strategy Box, we care because results matter. That's the culture of who we are. Getting results matter. So I challenge people, especially agency principals, why do you do what you do? Right? Why does this matter to you? And build because statements. Your customers, your prospects, your team can rally behind because statements all day long. All day long.
I absolutely respect when everyone needs to work in just today's world, in the States. And so sometimes for folks, a job is a job. But if you're going to dedicate 8+ hours of your day, I really hope that they care about where they're working and where they're working cares about them. So I appreciate the advocacy you do around forming that, and I think that's great advice.
And I know that we have remote work now, so maybe teams aren't in the same buildings, but a lot of agencies, they are. I mean, think about the time that you spend with the people you work with, right? I mean, it is very common to have breakfast at the office with your teammates, to have lunch at the office with your teammates. So you're spending 2/3 of your meal time with the people that you work with. You're spending 1/3 of your day with the people that you work with. Like most of the time that you have Monday through Friday that you're awake, you're spending it in an office. So the culture has to be that inviting, that warm, that very transparent culture as well too. And I wish that agency principals that are listening would understand and embrace that. Right? Because I mean, you talk about mental health and mental health strategies. It all starts with the culture of your agency. Do people want to come to work every day, or do they have to? And there's a big difference.
Could not be more stark, that difference in just quality of life that someone has. Like we all have a friend that just has a terrible job, and honestly, it's always better to quit that job and find something else than put yourself through it, because you're right. There's so much time, and you're just soaked in a bad place, and it's gonna get inside you. I love that, and I echo your statement. I really hope agency principals and agency owners are listening and like, oh yeah, this is not just a job. It is a piece of people's lives. So does technology help or harm an agency's processes or culture?
So I'm a huge proponent of using technology the right way. Technology, and I get this from one of my mentors, Billy Williams, right? Like technology should enhance what you do, not replace the components of what you do or who you are. So if you are utilizing technology, number one, utilize the tech that you need, and then learn all the things that the tech does. Because I can't tell you how many times I see people that have a tech stack of 10 or 11 items, and four of them do the same things, or four of them do something that the others do also. Yeah. And so while I do think technology is critically important, it's also how you use that technology and what it is used for. Yeah. That's more important to enhance the culture and the processes of your agency.
I completely agree. And I think from my personal perspective, something that helps is that consistency and sticking it out with a piece that you bring in. Because if you're swapping out technology inside the agency month over month, everyone's just, their heads are going to be spinning and they're not going to be able to like buy in or let it improve their processes. They're just going to be constantly randomized by it. Generally, what this podcast, the first iteration of this podcast has been conversations with technology partners. And so I'd love to know from your perspective, this is where we'll say not an ad, but just a conversation. Have you encountered technology solutions that really benefit an agency's processes or culture? Who's out there that stands out to you?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the what. Sure. How about the what? Yeah. And then we can go into who some of the players are. So obviously, we're talking insurance agency, so management system has to be the hub of what you do, right? I know a great one, right? One of my favorite artists is Prince. His favorite color was purple. Oh, sure. You know, Purple Rain management system. No, perfect. No, HawkSoft, great tool for management, the policy management piece. I always tell folks you need a CRM because I am much more of a CRM guy than I am an AMS guy, right? Sure. Because it's all about the customer relationship. And so if HawkSoft is your main hub, I'm finding components that fit my main hub and integrate well with my main hub. So from a CRM perspective, you have Agency Zoom, Insured Mind, Client Circle, which may not necessarily be a CRM in the sense of a CRM, but they do a lot of great things that CRMs do, and they match very well with HawkSoft that can make those two combined act very much like a CRM, right? And then your phone system should be integrated, and I know that there are some good vendors out there with Lightspeed Voice, you've got Ring Central, and then when we talk about the advanced stages, right? Like if that's your core, if that's your base, then you have components like Leo or Meet Leo that can do, I call it research on your behalf. So anything that can do research, anything that makes your renewal process, new customer onboarding, again, we're talking Client Circle, we're talking the folks at Levitate that can do communication for you. So that would be my main hub if I'm an agency. Those are the things that I'm actually looking for.
I think what your answer illuminates is something that we talk about a lot, and really the purpose behind this podcast is there is no one solution for an agency. Correct. It's about determining what are your processes and then what serves those processes. Right. Okay, quite honestly, this is a personal question that I need help with.
Let's do it.
And one of the things that you talked about at that Salt Lake City Hug event was you brought up the Eisenhower Square, which for those listening at home, I'll describe it. And maybe if I really want to make our producer's life miserable, we'll throw a graphic up right here, or somewhere around here.
So quadrant 1 is urgent and important. Quadrant 2,
which is urgent, not important. Or
opposite. Not urgent, but important.
Quadrant 3
thank you. Is urgent but not important. Yeah. And then quadrant 4 is not urgent nor is it important.
So so surprised maybe no one who's listened to this or ever met me. I have ADHD. I found out late in life, and on my desk is a sticky note with the 4 quadrants. Nice. Because I need it to help me realize what do I need to work on. Where I suffer is unimportant, non-urgent. So I'd love to get your perspective. So if I have an unimportant, non-urgent task, quadrant 4, what do I do with it?
Throw it away. It should not make your list. Right? If you put something in quadrant 4, and for those that are listening and watching, the Eisenhower Matrix is a time management tool that I use and that I've used for 20 plus years that helps me structure and own my time. Because there's a lot of times that maybe something's urgent and important for Kenny, doesn't mean that it has to be urgent and important for me, right? And so quadrant 4 is the non-urgent, non-important things that should never make your list. Those are things that should be delegated or filtered out. Maybe I create some rules that I just don't see those things, right? Like think about your email filters that you can create, right? So if it is from this sender or this is a subject line, immediately put it in my archives. That's what quadrant 4 is doing. It's taking something that you should never see and filing it away. It's not deleting it, but it's filing it away. And if you ever want to go back and look at it, it's still archived, but you don't see it. And that's what, I would say quadrant 3 and quadrant 4 are usually the biggest time sucks for agency staff. The biggest challenge is quadrant 1 because we assume everything is urgent and important, but the reality is it's not.
Absolutely. And it's the clarity of making that decision that really starts to help you be able to process your workload.
Exactly.
And I think that a lot of people, in my experience and myself, I think I'm on the record as describing HawkSoft as a group of firefighters because we're great at urgent, important tasks. But when you get into that mentality, you start to treat everything like that. And I think a lot of the work we've tried doing over the last few years is saying, how do we use the other quadrants? How do we make sure that we're not treating everything like a fire drill and more meaningfully approaching these things? And I definitely feel like in this market right now, agents need to embrace that too. They need to be saying like, if everything's on fire, what's the least scorched thing? And let's move it to a different quadrant.
Yeah, exactly. And to re-clarify for those, quadrant 1, it's urgent and it's important. Quadrant 2, it's not urgent, but it is important. Quadrant 3, it's urgent, but it's not important. And then quadrant 4, it's neither urgent nor important. And you want to spend most of your time in quadrant 2. You want to be working on important but non-urgent things because we're solution providers, we're problem solvers, right? Like if we always have to have this pace, it's where problems are made, right? It's where errors are made.
That really was a self-serving question because it's definitely one of those areas where I'm just like, well, if it exists, it must need to be done. But sometimes you need to give that grace to yourself of being like, you know what? It actually doesn't. I am so glad that we got to sit down and have this conversation. Me too. I'm very glad that you're here at Hug. When I saw you speak at Salt Lake City, I was like, wow, this is phenomenal. And I mean that sincerely. I sit through a lot of speakers and I thought you brought some very genuine energy and actionable things for agencies. So I really appreciate the work that you do. Really glad you came here and sat down with me. And I'm glad we got to start this relationship because hopefully I want to have this conversation a lot. Thank you for watching today's episode. Click the video description below to learn more about our guests and to view the latest podcast episode as well as other content from HawkSoft. We appreciate you watching and hope you join us next time on the Insurance Perspectives podcast. Thank you.